Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. We are public servants, and I think it's safe to say we're always looking for ways to better serve our communities right.
Absolutely. And technology, especially AI, well, it seems like everyone's talking about it these days.
But it can be tough to figure out, how to actually apply AI in a way that makes a real difference.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why we are diving into this excerpt from Jennifer Palka's AI Meets the Cascade of Rigidity.
Ooh, that title sounds a little intimidating.
Maybe a little, but trust me, it's worth it. Palka really gets to the heart of some of the obstacles facing government today.
Okay, so should we start with this idea of a polycrisis?
Yeah, that's a good place to start. We're facing all these interconnected crises, right? Climate change, economic instability, political polarization. It feels like everything's happening at once.
It's a lot to handle.
Yeah, it really is. And it puts a huge strain on government resources, on our ability to actually solve problems. So Polka argues that one of the key issues here is this concept of diminished state capacity. Basically, the idea that governments are struggling to achieve their goals and implement policies effectively.
I think we've all experienced that, right?
Yeah.
You have a great idea, a policy that could really help people, but then it gets bogged down in bureaucracy, in endless approvals and paperwork.
Exactly. It's so frustrating, and it can make you feel like you're banging your head against a wall sometimes.
For sure. So how does AI fit into all of this?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Palka suggests that AI could potentially help us overcome some of these obstacles. Like, imagine if we could streamline those bureaucratic processes, automate some of those repetitive tasks, free up more time and resources to actually focus on serving citizens.
Okay, that sounds promising, but I'm also a little wary. I've heard all the concerns about AI bias, privacy, job displacement.
Yeah, those are valid concerns for sure, and we need to be mindful of them as we explore the potential of AI. But I think Palka's point is that we can't let those concerns paralyze us. We can't let fear prevent us from exploring how AI can help us do our jobs better.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how do we find that balance,
Yeah.
between being cautious and being innovative?
Well, Polka introduces this concept she calls the Cascade of Rigidity. It's the idea that as well-intentioned safeguards move down the bureaucratic hierarchy, they often turn into rigid, counterproductive rules.
Oh, I've seen that happen a million times. Like you start with a simple rule to protect data security, and by the time it reaches the front lines, it's turned into this massive document requiring a dozen different approvals just to access a spreadsheet.
Exactly, and it creates this culture of risk aversion where people are so afraid of making a mistake, of breaking a rule, that they end up stifling innovation and creativity.
It's like we're so focused on avoiding failure that we forget about actually achieving success.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And Palka argues that this mindset, this cascade of rigidity, is one of the biggest obstacles to effectively using AI in government.
Because if we approach AI with that same rule-bound thinking, we're going to miss out on all the potential benefits, right?
Precisely, we need to find a way to be both responsible and innovative, to balance those safeguards with a willingness to experiment, to try new things.
So how do we do that? How do we create that culture of responsible innovation
Mm.
within government?
Well, that's what we're going to explore in the next part of our deep dive, so stay tuned.
We'll be right back.
So we're back, and I think it's worth reiterating this idea of the cascade of rigidity.
Right, because if we're going to talk about using AI in government, I mean, we have to address those potential roadblocks for today.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes, the best intentions can lead to these unintended consequences.
Like with President Biden's executive order on AI.
Yeah, exactly. It's all about setting these guardrails to ensure AI is used ethically and responsibly.
But Polka points out that those guardrails could turn into roadblocks if we're not careful.
Right, like imagine public consultation processes that take years to complete.
Yeah, that would basically kill any time-sensitive AI project.
Or a system where any negative feedback, no matter how small, can bring the whole project to a screeching halt.
It's almost like we're setting ourselves up for failure before we even begin.
And it can be tough to strike that balance. We want to be cautious, but we also don't want to stifle innovation.
So how do we find that sweet spot? How do we move beyond just mandates and constraints?
Well, Palka argues that we need to shift our focus from restriction to enablement.
Enablement, okay.
Mm.
What does that look like in practice?
So instead of just focusing on what AI can't do, we need to start asking what AI can do to improve government operations.
So like identifying those areas where AI can really add value, make things more efficient, more effective.
Exactly. Like imagine using AI to streamline benefit applications or to personalize learning experiences for students.
Or to help us better understand complex data sets so we can make more informed policy decisions.
Right. There are so many possibilities, and I think the key is to start small pilot projects. Test the waters, see what works.
And don't be afraid to fail, right? Because failure is just a part of the learning process.
Absolutely. And I think that's something we need to get better at in government, embracing a culture of experimentation, of learning from our mistakes.
So it's about creating a safe space to try new things, to innovate without fear of reprisal.
And I think that starts with leadership.
hmm
Leaders who are willing to champion change to create that culture of innovation.
But it also requires us, us as public servants, to be willing to step outside of our comfort zones, to learn new skills, to embrace new technologies.
Absolutely. We need to be proactive. We need
Yeah.
to be the ones driving this change forward.
Because ultimately it's about serving the public good, right? It's about using AI to make a real difference in the lives of the people we serve.
Exactly. And I think that's something we can all get behind.
So if we're all on board with this idea of using AI to improve government, how do we actually make it happen? How do we build that AI competence that Polka talks about?
Well, that's a great question, and it's something we'll delve into after a short break.
We're back and ready to tackle this question of building AI competence head on.
Yeah, how do we actually do it? Where do we start?
Well, Polka makes a really interesting point that kind of surprised me at first. She says building AI competence isn't just about, hiring a bunch of data scientists.
Really? I thought that was the whole point, like getting more tech experts into government.
It's part of it, sure, but she argues that it's more fundamental than that. It's about building operational competence.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break that down for me. What does operational competence mean in this context?
It means having a deep understanding of how your agency actually works. Like, what's your mission? What are your workflows? What data do you collect? Where are the bottlenecks?
So basically knowing your stuff inside and out. Exactly. Because if you don't have a strong grasp of your own operations, you're not going to be able to identify the right problems for AI to solve.
It's like trying to use a hammer to fix a leaky faucet, right tool, wrong problem.
Exactly. And Palka points out that a lot of agencies, unfortunately, have kind of lost touch with their own operations.
How so?
Well, they've become so reliant on outside vendors and complicated systems that they've kind of outsourced their own thinking.
Makes sense. If you're always relying on someone else to tell you how things work, you're not really in control, are you?
Right, and that's where the opportunity lies. Instead of just trying to layer AI on top of existing systems, we need to use it as a catalyst for change, for really understanding and improving how government works from the inside out.
So use AI to kind of audit ourselves in a way, see where we can be more efficient, more effective.
Precisely. And think about it. If you're the person in your agency who understands both the operations AD, the potential of AI, you become incredibly valuable. You can bridge that gap between the tech world and the real world of government service.
You become the translator, the one who can make AI actually work for the public good. That's exciting.
It is, and Polka gives some really great real-world examples of this in action. Like, the IRS recently developed this really user-friendly tax filing tool, and it was a huge success.
That's awesome. What made it work so well?
Well, it was built by an internal team that really focused on delivering value to citizens. They knew the pain points of the old system, they listened to user feedback, and they used AI to make the whole experience simpler and more efficient.
I love hearing success stories like that. Makes me hopeful. But I'm guessing not every AI project goes so smoothly, right?
Of course not. Polka also talks about the Department of Education's attempt to revamp the FAFSA form using AI, and it was a bit of a mess, to be honest.
Oof. What went wrong there?
Well, they kind of fell into the trap of relying on traditional contracting processes and those bureaucratic hurdles we talked about earlier. They ended up with a system that was clunky, confusing, and didn't really improve the experience for students.
So it's a cautionary tale, right? A reminder that technology alone isn't enough. You need that operational competence, that focus on user needs, to really make AI work for the public good.
Exactly. It all comes back to people, to empowering public servants to be the innovators, the problem solvers, the ones who are driving government into the future.
Wow, this has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of what AI competence really means and why it's so crucial for the future of government.
I'm glad to hear that. And remember, this is just the beginning of the conversation. The future of AI in government is being written right now, and you have a voice in that story.
So true. And for all our listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.